Okay. We will wait a second. Oh, I hope the other guys didn't give up.
Oh, I'll go on mute here.
Okay, you were able to join. Wendy, gosh, this is terrible. Are y'all still there?
Yep. There's I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody
I
in the
just text Betty to tell her you sent her a new link.
Okay, thank you, Linda.
You're welcome.
If you guys don't mind, let's wait just another minute for
Sure.
hopefully some other people will join. There's Susan. Okay, great.
Yay, I'm here.
Right, yay. So let's wait a second for Sherry and Mel. There's Sherry. Hey, Sherry. Boy, comedy of errors. Whew.
We can do it.
It's supposed to warm back up next week, so I think after this experience, my plan is to do some tutorial videos and put them on my website. So if anybody's interested later on for that, you might look for that, but
I
I
am.
don't want to start again until we get a couple of more. I think Janet finally gave up. Anyway. So is Betty here yet, Linda?
She said she's getting a invalid ID. I told her to look at the second one you sent in the same string of emails.
I couldn't get on the first one she sent, but the very last one I was able to.
Yeah, it's in the same
Same
string.
here.
So
Let me see if here we go. There's somebody else coming. There's Sherry.
Betty's on.
Yeah, you have to delete all those other emails. I'm sorry. There's Betty and Sherry's here now, I think. Missing Linda from Austin. Let me see if I can text them instead. There's Linda. Okay. Who we got coming in? There we go. There's Linda. Okay. Thank y'all so very much for your patience. I guess that is everybody. Linda, hope you can hear me okay. And so let's get going back on these daisies. And I am recording, correct?
Mhm.
I believe I am. Yes. Okay, so sorry for that interruption. Again, here we go. So I have placed did y'all see me do this?
Mhm.
I'm just placing my, the centers for these daisies here. The ones that I can't see all of the centers. And with flowers like this, let me just say, it's really important just to keep a good drawing. So, and this looks a mess right now, but what I'll do is go back in behind some of those daisies, and I'm going to just work on each one at a time now. And what I'll do is go back in with my background color. Now, this is the reason I made this ahead of time. So I can go back in and just carve out some of those little, where the petals, there's some indentions and some breaks in the petals. And so I can go back in with that gray color that I made in the beginning and do that. So now my next step here, over the years, I've kind of come to this way of painting flowers. I like to scrub in some color underneath first. I use something transparent, like that transparent orange. Then I will come in behind it with my background generally. And then, or sometimes I'll go ahead and paint the daisies and then come back in there. But sometimes it's easier just to do it this way. So I'm going to take a lot of white. Those daisies are white. I'm going to add a little bit of that yellow here. Now it looks really yellow. I add a little more white to that. And very carefully with this bright brush, I am just going to start popping in some of these shapes. And again, sometimes I'll go against the form. Trying to see the direction that the daisies are pointing. So this one has a petal coming all the way out here.
What size brush are you using?
This is one of those ruby satin, those silver ruby satin, and it's a size 6, and it's a bright. And remember, the brights are referring to the shorter bristles and the chiseled edge on the end. Okay.
Okay.
I'll use some of this sometimes too. This is one of those silver ruby satins, and it's a flat, and it's a size 2. So the bristles are a little bit longer, but they're both chiseled on the end. Okay. So I'm just doing this very carefully, and I'm going to pop in some of these flowers, being more careful with the flowers on that are most prominent, the ones right in front, the ones that are catching the most light. Now I'm going to take a little bit of that gray and put it into this white here. So I've got two tones now, and just soften some of this together. Now, I want y'all to notice something. I'm not going to keep going back into this, hopefully, because when that happens, what ends up happening is you lose your shapes. So I may go in between or just around the edges a little bit, but for the most part, I'm going to leave those white petals alone. So I don't keep brushing the same brush stroke. That's what I'm trying to say here. Now there's a flower back here behind this one. And it's got some gray tones in it. And I'm stepping back a lot when I do this. Now this flower is turning this direction a little bit. So paying attention to the fact that these petals are a little bit longer on this side. So I'm picking up paint and laying it down. And as I do this, I'm pulling, kind of holding my brush on the side, and I'm pulling it out, pulling the brush stroke out. Now there's these petals on this side are barely there, they're shorter. So I'm going to indicate that. Now see, I'll probably come back in with some of that background shape now. Some of that background color, and carve out those petals a little more. And pull my brush into there. See that? Okay, back and forth, back and forth. There is a little light just on the touch of that flower back there. Let's see, I've already got my main players in there. These are my main flowers. Did Mel join us? Did I? Maybe she gave up. I forgot about Mel. Y'all see her? No.
Don't see her.
I don't see several of you. So, okay, well, we're gonna continue on and just work on this. So I hate that though. So very carefully just carving these out. I'm gonna clean my brush. Pick up this smaller brush, this flat. And if I go back into an already, if I've put a petal on already and I go back into it, I really make sure I have plenty of paint and try to lay it on there very carefully. So cleaning my brush each time. Okay, let's put in this background. This one back here. More paint. I'm just using my subject matter to, now these, I'm using my subject matter. I'm squinting and looking at what I've got up there that I'm painting from. And very quickly now, I'm gonna just scrub in these other flowers. Now I've got a little bit of gray in there because those are in the shadow plane. Need to put my center back in. Keeping my brush clean. And that one down here is almost out of sight. Now this is kind of a warm gray I'm using. And I haven't really softened any edges yet, other than pulling my shapes into other shapes. Does that make sense? I hope. Put that center back in there. Okay, there's some darker petals back in here, and they're just kind of going every which way. I mean, you really can't see what they're doing. Now, I see this flower here. There's a prominent petal coming up out, and it's catching more light right here. So I'm going to put that in. This one has a touch of light here and here. Now, this is not going to look exactly like all of those flowers up there, but I mean, I'm okay with that. I don't want to do, I've never enjoyed painting photorealism. I've painted tighter in the past, but I'd rather paint an impression of stuff. And once I've got the main players in, some of this other stuff, when you squint down, they take on less importance anyway. So and this is not necessarily the way to paint flowers, it's what I do. So I hope you find this useful. So this one back here is facing out. Okay, now let's go in behind those with some of that background color and carve them out a little bit better. And if I don't cover up all of that transparent orange in there, it's okay. This flower has a break in the petals right there. And this is a lot darker down behind these. It takes practice to do this. And I realize that. Just jump in. Ooh, I heard something moving outside. It's really windy today. Okay. When I squint down at those petals up there, I mean those daisies, I see a few dark accents in here. I'll show you. So I'm going to take my ruby satin flat and there's some dark accents. They're a dark green inside those petals. Right where the petals touch the center. And all you have to do is suggest those. But it kind of sets those centers down into that they're similar to a closed shadow. And it sets those centers down into the flower. Does that make sense? I hope. On here. Now, also some of these centers have a center like that. Not quite that dark. Oops, I don't care for that, so. Go back and fix it. Carefully. All right. Now, I want to pull this together. I see just some shapes back in there. And what I'm going to do is pull a stem up on top of this. I don't know if you can see it in the image up there, but there's a stem right here coming up and hitting this flower in the back. So I'm gonna soften these edges. Let's start softening some edges now. This class is about edges, so I want to just show you when you start pulling the edges together, how much of a difference it makes. So I'm just going to pull this edge into my background, because when I squint, you really cannot see where the picture stops, really, and the background starts. Same thing with this guy. Clean brush. Edge work. Now, all of these edges are pretty hard right now. So I'm just going to soften just a few of them. But I do want some hard edges on those daisies because they're my center of interest. They're my main players. And I want to soften here. I'll put a little blue in there. Blue is a cool tone and it pushes things back somewhat. We'll talk more about that next week when we paint a landscape. Redefining some shapes. Clean my brush. I'll soften this here. Sometimes you can soften an edge. I think I said this already, but by pulling a shape into another one. Let me soften this. I am hearing somebody, I'm not sure who that is, shuffling around a little bit. You might want to mute yourself. I'm not sure. So it's not distracting to everybody else. Okay. I'm going to make a medium value green. Probably going to have to use a bristle brush to do this in order to lay it on without disturbing what's underneath it. Okay. If anybody has any questions, go ahead. I'm indicating, I'm playing now. I'm indicating greenery. And I'm not sure how much I am crazy about this, but let me soften some of this into the background. I am dropping paper towels all over the floor. I get so carried away. Okay, I'm going to go back in now with some stuff in the background and play with this a little. And I do this a lot. There's some lighter tones coming down in here. Back here is a little bit lighter in areas. Carve out. some of those flowers as I go. Plenty of paint. You have to have plenty of paint on your palette. Now that's too light for over there. I can see a little bit of a harder edge on this handle. So you can you can pick and choose what edges by squinting and just indicating which edges you want to say. Now I'm going to come back behind here. Clean my brush. This looks a lot messier on the screen. But this is basically how I handle this stuff. It really is. And I'm kind of going fast because of class, but now what I generally do at this point is I may let it set up and then come back in later and clean it up a little bit. If you let it set up a little bit, you can come back in later and like I could carve out some of this a little bit better. I got a lot of white in my mixture, so it tends to start muddying things. I think what I'll do is I'm going to wait and come back on top of this here. I'm not happy with this in here. So I'll probably come back in there and let's see if I can do it now. But sometimes you get so much paint on there that it's hard to lay it on top of. I think losing that connection kind of threw me for a loop here. That's my excuse anyway. This is not horrible, but it's not the best painting I've ever done. So there's a flower down in here, but it's so close to the value of the background. Trying to figure out how I can distinguish it back there. I do see just a touch of the center. So I could do that. And I see this petal is a lot longer than I've got it. Anyway, I like this one here the best. And you know why? Because I went in and I left it alone. I didn't try to monkey mess with it. Carve out those shapes. Okay, well, that's not horrible. I guess. Did somebody join us? Don't know who that was, or somebody left, whatever. I heard a ding.
Hi, Judy. This is Jan Lee. I finally just was able to get on.
Oh, Jan, I'm so sorry.
Oh,
We
frustrating.
had we had a bad connection anyway, and I lost everybody. And so I had to send a different email. So I was hoping you saw it.
Yeah, I happened to look back on my email and did see it. And then I tried the one that you sent specifically to me. That one didn't work, but the one that you sent everybody did. So
Well,
who knows?
I don't know. I don't know if Zoom is having some trouble today or if it's my internet connection, but I opened the meeting that I sent y'all the link for yesterday, and it didn't open the right one for some reason. It started a brand new one. And so that's why you got the message that so that's why I had to go back and send out anyway. So anyway, I'm glad you're here. So
Thank you. And I'll go back and watch the recording.
okay.
Send it so I can.
Well, it's going to be 2 recordings.
Okay.
Because of the fact that we got disconnected and everybody had to come back on later. So anyway, so yeah, I'm just finishing up these little daisies. And does anybody have questions? No questions. What I'm doing now is just trying to clean this up a little bit. And now you can see how these objects kind of mold into the background, and that's just edge work and keeping the right values next to each other. So actually I can go back and I can do some of that with, and I might. So I'll take a picture of this painting when I get off of when we get off the call. But then if I go back and work on it, Annie, I'll send you a before and after, because I could really soften some of this just right into the background too. And edge work really is so important. And I'm afraid I got off track, and let me basically just say this about edges. Whenever you have shapes next to each other on a painting, and a painting is all about putting shapes of value, the right value, in the right spot. And when you put another shape right next to it, it creates an edge. So right here, let me move the camera down. Let me see if I can get just a better view. It's not gonna work, but let me take some photos of close-ups of this painting and send them to you. But I see some edges. I see edges back here that I could soften. I see this edge here between the blue and where it goes into almost black on the picture. And whenever you put those shapes together like a mosaic, just think of a mosaic of stones, or a collage. Say you're cutting out a whole bunch of pieces of different shades of red, okay, to make an apple. And you've got a shape of dark red construction paper and a shape of medium red construction paper, and you put it right next to the dark one. And then you put cut out a smaller, lighter, even orange color of construction paper, and put it right next to. And when you start putting those together, it makes the apple, right? Well, those pieces of construction paper are going to create an edge between the different colors of it, okay? So I see an edge right here, but it's so soft in painting, you can just gently soften those together. But what's going to happen is, if you don't keep your shapes separate from each other somewhat, if I start going over here and playing around with this highlight and then moving that over here into my dark shape, it's going to break it up, and it's going to make this whole thing just one color. Okay, it really muddies the values. Let me just do something here real quick, show you what I mean. I see so many students doing this, not y'all in particular. I mean, I'm not saying anybody in particular. I see, and I used to do it too, till I figured out that okay, I have a tangerine sitting here. Let's just put that tangerine there. And can y'all see that? Okay. Oh, I lost my view. Yeah, okay. So here's my tangerine. So there's my little drawing. And it's not round, is it? I mean, it's more angular. If you really, really look at it, it's more angular than it is round. Okay. And it has this little cast shadow, which helps define the tangerine. So when I squint and I'm looking at that tangerine or clementine or whatever, I see kind of a muddy, dirty orange right here. Now that's my, are you guys still there? Now I'm
Yes.
freaking, okay, thank you. Now I'm freaking out if I don't hear anything. So here's my construction piece of paper, this dirty orange here for my shadow, right? Or my piece of tile or whatever. If you're painting a, or if you're doing a stone mosaic. Okay, now I see another shape that looks kind of like this. It's not quite as dark as this, but it's still in the shadow plane. The shadow kind of comes around here like that. Okay, but it's not as dark as this one. About that color. So I'm gonna keep them separate. I'm keeping my shapes separate from each other. Okay, now I actually see just a sliver. Well, I don't want to confuse y'all, but as here's my highlight on this tangerine, okay? The light's hitting it, coming in from here, hitting it right there. So as it goes around, it loses value and color, yada, yada, yada. But first we got to get our, now I'm just going to make this orange by using my yellow and my red, my permanent red. I'll keep my shapes separate from each other. Now there may be a little sliver over here of, as it goes into the shadow, it turns. But that's a small detail I'll put in later. So keep my shapes separate from each other. This is my light plane. So light plane, shadow plane. This part of the shadow is darker, okay? Very mosaic-y, if that's a word. Let's put in my shadow plane. Now, let's put in the light side of my cloth down there. Keeping it all very separate, see? But I don't want to leave a halo either. So I'm going to cover up those lines, my sketching lines. So let's just do that. Let's go right up next door to that tangerine. Don't want any halo lines in my painting. Okay. And all of this is my foreground. right? Now there's a little stem up here. I'll put that on last. Now I kind of lost the shape of my tangerine, so let's go back and put this angular part back in back here. Okay. And here's my background actually comes all the way, and I'm carving out my tangerine shape when I go around it. Okay. So looks pretty weird, right? But that's what I want you guys to concentrate on. No details, no little indentions anywhere. I promise you, this is what I think about when I'm painting, and it's what I strive for, simplicity. So now I'm going to clean my brush, and I'm going to soften my edges. Now this one, if I squint at my subject, it's relatively soft. This one is too. And so is this one.
Judy, are you using thinner on your brush or just a dry brush?
No, dry brush. And I'm holding it on the edge like this
Uh-huh.
and softening. Just tickling that edge. And I'll go back over now, and if I need to correct my drawing, I'll do that. I'm gonna clean my brush again with some mineral spirits and soften, because this highlight is soft as well. Sometimes I'll just pull it into what's behind it without losing it. Okay. And then I'll put in some little details. I promise you, this is how I approach painting. So I'm just softening the edge, clean brush. Soften, soften. But I'm trying real hard not to go back into my, too much anyway. Trying real hard not to disturb my real definite shapes. And now it starts to read like a round object, right? Hopefully. Soften, soften. I see I'm gonna set that down on the table. A little more. Oops. I probably should have used orange. Here we go. And I got too much up into my have to just be careful with this. Carving out. Now, if there's a little bounce light or a reflected light up in here, yes, you can put it in. But you have to be so careful, and I don't disturb all of this. I don't disturb my solid shapes. And it starts to look like either an orange ball or a tangerine. Now, at this point, yeah, I could go back in. I do see some little indentations here, back here, and I could put a couple of those in if I wanted to, but I don't even know if that's, always necessary. And I try, like I said, I try my best to not disturb my big shapes. I hope that helps. And painting, let me say this about painting flowers. It takes a lot of practice. I've painted flowers for a number of years, and I really paint them better when I'm by myself and can concentrate on what I'm doing. But I approach it the same way I showed you guys today, and Janet, you'll see in the video. Not my best painting of daisies, but it's okay. But anyway, I hope that helps. You really need to pay attention to edges, because edges will really mold your painting together and make it look 3D. Okay. That, and along with the correct values and keeping your shape separate, but just softening that edge. Okay. Questions? Y'all ask me some questions. Have you got any? I hope.
Yeah, Judy, when you say like you're tickling those edges, does it matter what direction you use your dry brush? You like just squiggle back and forth, or you need to be following the curve shape, or what's the best way to do that?
Well, you have to practice doing it. And I would suggest, like you and Janet, you're using some of these apples but I usually just hold my brush on the side, usually take a bristle brush, and I don't do it like this. I hold it on its side and just kind of tickle that edge right there. Make sense?
It does. I just find when I do it, I end up blending the colors more than I wanted to.
Yeah.
And then I want to go back and put some of the dark back in, and then you're like going down a rabbit hole.
Yeah, I know. You know what? That takes practice, and you're not alone. You're not alone. So just all I can tell you is, now I really don't have enough paint on here. I didn't use a lot of paint on it, but I should have used a little bit more paint. There's a saying that says thin darks and thick lights. And when you have thick lights, you can actually, like, where's my other brush that I had? I don't know what I did with it, but when you have some thick lights, let me just get a little thicker paint here. More paint. When you have really thick lights, okay. Ooh, that's better. Can y'all see the difference?
Mhm.
Because my value is a little bit lighter too, I think. But then you can just, this is a softer brush, but just pull some of the light into the dark. Just be very careful when you do it, and you'll get the hang of it. Just keep practicing. What I was telling them earlier, Janet, was Tom Browning used to have us, and I've taken like two or three workshops from him, and he would have us paint the same thing over and over again, but time yourself, like paint it 20 minutes, set the timer, and get the whole thing covered and try to do as much as you can in 20 minutes. And then do it again, in 10 minutes. Set your timer and just keep going. And you will find that you will get better. It's such good practice. Oops, now see, that's what happens when you start futzing with it. Another way of softening edges is just by pulling the paint into the other, the plane that's beside it. Another thing you can do is putting, in order to soften an edge, putting a little bit darker value right between the two. So you're not softening really at all, but you're letting the paint soften it by using a little bit darker value. Let me make that a little darker. Right here. I've done that a lot. It's all practice, guys. It really, really is. Have any of you, I was going to ask you this, have any of you bought that Tom Browning book?
I
Yes.
have.
You have? Good.
Mhm.
Well, start looking at it, and really, he says the same thing that I say. And like I told you guys, I'm going to keep these recordings on they're yours to watch over and over again if you want to in the next 6 months. I'm not sure. I don't want to say longer than that because I'm not sure what I'm going to do yet. But you guys paid for the course, and I want you to be able to go back and view it and listen to the questions and all of that. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
Judy, I have that book. I also have the Charles Sobeck book from many years ago from Cape Cod.
Oh yeah, and you know what? That's Sobek.com, S-O-B-E-K. Charles Sobek, his family kept his website up, and those are such good little exercises. If you go on there, there's dozens of them, and you could do an exercise a day and really learn a lot. And if you don't understand something, ask me, email me or something. And I don't want to pressure any of you to have to do what I'm doing or paint what I'm painting. I don't want to pressure anybody and make you feel like, oh, I have to send her a picture this week. You don't have to. But I do want you to know I'm here if you want to critique, okay? But there's no pressure involved whatsoever. So, anything else?
Thank you for
Well,
all the work that you're putting into it. Oh my goodness, it's hours and hours and hours.
Well,
Just great. It's really helpful.
Yeah.
well, thank you. I appreciate you saying that. And even though we were disconnected today, I hope you got a lot out of it. And I realize that the videos are real spotty and there's a lot of talk. I realize that now. I realize the value of having someone edit your videos, because they can cut out all the oohs and ahs and the pauses and things I tend to do because I'm thinking about what I'm doing and painting instead of what I'm saying. So I appreciate y'all putting up with that. And I think we've had a great class, and we've got 2 more. And next week, I want to talk about landscape painting and painting outside. And I want to do a little study like this. I'm going to do 2 demonstrations next week. One, a little study with just using that Soroya palette, which is just 3 colors plus white. And then I want to talk about Notan and drawing in a landscape. And of course, we have talked a lot about drawing all through these past few weeks. And you know how drawing is important. And drawing, there's a whole chapter on it in the Tom Browning book. We will cover some of that next week as far as perspective, measuring, how you can measure how big is this tangerine against, if I were painting it with that vase, I could measure, okay, here's my tangerine size this way. Well, how many times up is that vase? And those are just a few tools. I may send some to you via email, but again, I'm so sorry for all the emails this week, especially you guys at home. You probably get all these emails and you think, oh my goodness. So hopefully next week we won't get cut off. Our weather is supposed to be better here. Who knows? I'll try. So thank you so much for joining, guys. And if nobody else has any more questions, then I'll see you next week.
Thank you,
All right,
Judy.
thank you.
Right,
Bye-bye.
thank
Great
you.
class.
All
Okay.
right,
you.
take
Bye-bye.
care.
Bye.